Okay, so today we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people really wanted me to talk about, and that is balancing PMR grinds. And PMR grinds are basically like a base grind of muscle meat, organ meat, and raw bone. Um, it like the kind of grind it is depends on where you're getting it from or if you're making it yourself. Most PMR grinds are like a single protein. They don't mix proteins that often, mainly because pet food in general is usually a single protein. They have like chicken formula or beef formula or lamb or duck. So usually PMR grinds will be a single protein like that, just in case the pet has different protein allergies and they can kind of just see, feed what works for their pet. Some, of course, do mix proteins to give people more variety. But we're going to talk about mainly single protein grinds just to make things a little easier. Because those are the most common. So I have a few slides, but then I'm going to do a few different example recipes as well. So let me start with the slides just to explain a little bit more. So, and if you guys have any questions, you can always ask in the chat and I'll answer them. So let's see. All right, so the common PMR grinds that we often see, at least in like the US, Canada, parts of Europe, are chicken, turkey, duck, beef, lamb, pork, and rabbit. Actually, I don't even see pork that often as far as grinds go, which I wish I would see more pork grinds. But yeah, those are the main proteins that we commonly see. And then less common, at least for, again, the US, Canada, things like that, would be bison, goat, venison. I see a few venison, muskrat, buffalo, horse, pheasant, kangaroo, and emu. Of course, kangaroo and emu would be a lot more common in like Australia and things like in that area. I don't often see horse grinds or buffalo grinds. I've seen muskrat a few times. I've seen a few goat and a few bison. But we'll talk about that as well. So the nutrients that are usually low in PMR grinds are manganese, which is a mineral, vitamin D, vitamin E, EPA and DHA, which is an omega-3, these are omega-3 fatty acids, and then iodine, which is a mineral. So a lot of people think, oh my gosh, these PMR grinds are so low in so many different things. No, not really. It's just a few different nutrients, and it's pretty easy to add them in. A few other nutrients that are sometimes low, and this is more for like cats and ferrets, some of them at least, are zinc, copper, iron, which are all minerals, La, which is a fatty acid, folic acid, which is a B vitamin, and thiamine, which is a B vitamin. So folic acid and thiamine are mainly for cats and ferrets. They have a higher B vitamin requirement. So it'll usually be met for dogs and puppies. And then these other minerals, it's kind of depending on what PMR grind, what protein we're using. So we'll talk about that as well. And then, so we'll talk about each nutrient and what protein it's usually low in really quick as well. So for zinc, it's usually going to be low in turkey, chicken, and rabbit. Red meats are a lot higher in zinc, usually. More wild game will be higher in zinc. So chicken, turkey, and rabbit are pretty usually low in zinc. Copper, this will be low in things like chicken and pork. I tested a few different PMR grinds and different proteins that I had kind of trying to make a PMR grind for certain things. And seems like it's mainly just chicken and pork. There may be a few others that are like more novel that may be a little bit low in copper. But chicken specifically, their livers do not have that much copper in it. Even turkey pretty much meets copper, but chicken is just a lot lower. And pork is kind of strange because there is copper in pork liver, but for some reason, it's not bioavailable to our pets. So they really don't get any copper from the liver. They'll get a little bit from the muscle meats and other organ meats. But as far as meeting their needs, it's usually a little bit too low. And then iron, this would be mainly for puppies, kittens, cats, and ferrets. Iron is usually meant for adult dogs in most grinds, but rabbit and turkey are slightly low in iron. Rabbit in general, unless it's like wild rabbit, it's pretty low in a lot of minerals. So you'll see rabbit a lot in these lists. This is a fatty acid. So this will be low in a lot of red meat proteins. It's very high in poultry, at least chicken, it's very high. But most of the red meat proteins that you'll be feeding, it's going to be a little low in it. So keep that in mind for that one. Folic acid, mainly just rabbit. Again, it's pretty low in a lot of nutrients. So folic acid will definitely need to be, well, for most rabbit grinds, you're going to be kind of adding a lot of different things to that. Yes. Rabbits in captivity are not fed well. They're not bred well. They're not raised well. So yeah, it's actually kind of hard to find well raised and fed rabbits, even from like farmers. A lot of farmers will still have them in like hutches, and they really need to be making contact with the ground. And a lot of rabbit breeders will say, oh, the actually touching, being on the ground actually is harmful to them, which is crazy to me to hear that. But yeah, I only know like a few people that raise their own rabbits and feed their own rabbits to their pets because they can never really find a good, farmer or source that breeds them well, which is sad. But then, okay, last one is thiamine. This is another B vitamin. This would mainly be low for cats and ferrets, but this is commonly low in things like chicken, turkey, beef, duck, and rabbit, at least from what I'm seeing from the formulator and from nutrient data that I've had. So I think that's the last one. So I guess we'll go ahead and get into the formulator and kind of just look at how to balance these grinds, because it's actually pretty easy. So I will just use Matsu as an example, and then I'll also use like a puppy as an example. So Matsu's around 25 pounds, 5 years. Whoops. Why did that happen? And if you guys want me to do like an example pet or a different one than Matsu, I'm happy to do that, but it's kind of the same either way. Okay, so I have the Viva Raw base grinds in here, just the pure base grinds, and they use the 80-10-10 model. So 80% muscle meat, 10% raw bone, and then 5% of that is liver, and 5% of that is one other secreting organ meat. But if it's something like poultry, which it's hard to get a second secreting organ meat usually, then 10% will make up, or 10% would be liver. So sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 10% liver. Yeah. And that's what mainly most people who make PMR grinds, it's going to follow that 80-10-10 model. Not always. There's some that I see just completely random percentages. But that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, because that's pretty common. Emily said I may have missed this as I joined slightly late, but do we need to adjust for taurine for cats? Yes, that's actually something I forgot to add into the slides. So thank you for mentioning that. Taurine is something that will be needed in the grinds. When meats are ground up, taurine, which is an amino acid, will sometimes be lost during the grinding process. This is usually because a lot of the myoglobin, or the juices that come out when grinding, are kind of lost. So a lot of the taurine will be lost in those juices, of course, unless it's added and kept into the grinds. but sometimes they drain them just because it gets really juicy and like people don't really like that. Another thing that I commonly hear is that taurine can oxidize. So when it's exposed to oxygen, and a lot of it will be exposed to oxygen when it's ground up and mixed up, then it oxidizes. So taurine will need to be added because it's an essential amino acid for cats and ferrets. It's not essential for dogs because it can be synthesized in their body. They can kind of create it themselves through two other amino acids. But yes, taurine is another thing that will be needed to be added. And actually, the data that I have from Viva Raw, it's meeting the taurine levels, I believe. But it's something that you need to keep in mind still. So I would still add it at least a little bit because it's a water soluble nutrient. So any excess will be kind of excreted in the urine. It's not going to build up in the body and cause a overdose or anything. So we'll talk about that as well. And yeah, that is a lot of liver, Sydney, especially like duck. Duck liver is like crazy high in vitamin A. So thinking about feeding like 10% liver kind of bothers me. And that's kind of why I try and do DIY as much as I can. But sometimes you just, have to. So that's why I also suggest rotating between different proteins. So let's start with the chicken, actually, Viva chicken grinds. And then after I do these common proteins, I'll try and it'll be hard, but I'll try and make a few like mock-up PMR grinds for other proteins that I don't have in here for the people who kind of feed that. Because I know a lot of people who can only feed like specific proteins that are kind of novel to us in America. I don't have much data on that because they haven't done much nutritional data or analysis on those proteins, which sucks, but I will try. So Matsu would need around 10 ounces of the chicken grinds, and their calories kind of run low. Like it says very low intake right now. So I don't know if I believe that this calorie amount is correct. And I've even talked to Viva Raw about this, and they said it's running lower than it probably is. So I usually ignore that. And I just look at the nutrients. So obviously it's going to be meeting all the amino acids. Amino acids are easily met through meat, like easily. It's actually meeting most of the fatty acids, well, all of them. Even omega-3s, but it's always good to add like oily fish or something to the food just because just because you're meeting a certain nutrient doesn't mean it can't go a little higher, especially during specific reasons, like if your pet has joint issues or they're a growing puppy or kitten, the omega-3s being a little bit higher would be beneficial. So it's meeting calcium and phosphorus with those meaty bones in there, magnesium as well. But we start to see that quite a few things are low. So like I said, copper, zinc, manganese, they're going to be low. Iodine. Did I mention that in my slides? I may not have, but iodine is commonly low. And then vitamin D, vitamin E. There's like a few that I didn't mention in my slides, so I'll talk about that now, I guess. But thiamine is actually a little bit low for dogs here, and B12. So there are a few things that I didn't mention in my slides that we'll talk about now. What oily fish do you recommend, canned or raw? I recommend both. I usually recommend raw because that'll be less high in sodium. Canned fish is commonly like pretty much always added salt in there. But I do still feed it. I just rotate it with raw fish. And the type of fish that I usually recommend are salmon, as long as it's not salmon from the Pacific Northwest, because there's a issue with salmon poisoning over there in those waters. And but salmon is very high in vitamin D and omega-3s. So salmon and mackerel is another one. Atlantic mackerel, Spanish mackerel. Pacific mackerel. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is king mackerel because they're a little bit higher in mercury. But mackerel is another one that's very high in vitamin D and omega-3s. Herring, smelt, anchovies, sardines, those are also very good. Will you be able to add my pet carnivore grinds in the sheet? I would love to, because my pet carnivore has a lot of great grinds. They have the beaver and muskrat and stuff. I need to message them. I don't know if they'll have like nutrient data for me, but they are ones that are on my list to message to see if they have any data that I can add into here. You're welcome. Okay, so onto these chicken grinds. Okay, so chicken is pretty low in a lot of different minerals, and even some B vitamins here for my adult dog. So I'm sorry for saying it was only for cats, because at least chicken and rabbit are probably going to be a little bit low in some B vitamins. So let's try and balance these out, starting with the top. So copper. Copper, like I said, it's mainly found in livers. It's going to be the most concentrated in liver, and chicken liver is not very high in copper. So there are a few foods that are decently high in copper, but not like liver. Another food that comes to mind is oysters, and they're another food that they're going to be a little salted when you find them canned, and it's kind of annoying and expensive to feed them raw. Well, to buy them raw and then boil them. But just to try them out, since they're another great source of zinc, which is also low, we'll see if we can kind of meet these copper needs with the oysters. So let's try to kill two birds with one stone. So in the next formulator update, I'm going to be providing these two, actually these three, maybe just these two. I might just be using these for myself because not many people will be buying these. But Pacific oysters and Eastern wild oysters. I only have canned oysters in there right now. But for people who like to get them sourced from specific areas or wild catch, buy them raw and then cook them yourself, these two options are in here as well. And right now I actually do have some Eastern wild oysters. So I will try and add those. So a lot of these whole foods that you add, you really don't need to add too much. So I start with a very small amount. So I'll just do 0.3 ounces and see what that does for me. And wow, it's already meeting it and exceeding it. So that's awesome. So I'm going to keep an eye on these zinc and copper amounts when I look at the nutrient ratios, because altering that will help the nutrient ratios get to the perfect kind of ratio there. How do we know when there's a formulator update? I'll send out an email to basically everyone who has the formulator. It'll be sent to your email that you bought the formulator with. So just keep that in mind. And also I will announce it on my stories, and I'll make an announcement on the Paws of Prey Club too. So hopefully everyone can see that there's an update out. Is this kind of guesswork? So kind of, but I do have these cheat sheets here that I should have mentioned before I started building. The cheat sheets are in the Paws of Prey Club, and on the second page, I kind of give the nutrients that are pretty much always low in PMR grinds and DIY meals without anything added but bones, muscle, meat, and organ. So this basically shows you the omega-3s, vitamin D, vitamin E, zinc, iodine, manganese. These are the main ones that are going to be low. And I give examples of what you can use to fill those gaps. So for zinc, I say canned oysters. So that's why I'm using the oysters. Are the Pacific oysters in there? I live in the Pacific Northwest, and that's easy for me to source. Yes, I think I have the Pacific in there. Yes, Pacific. So that should be out soon. I'm just kind of doing bug tests on it right now to make sure I'm not giving you a buggy formulator. So yeah, it should be out pretty soon. So, okay, next, as we are looking at the formulator and also looking at our cheat sheet, iodine is low. So iodine is very high in kelp. And I give kind of the brands that I was recommending at the time. I have Now Kelp or Life Flow iodine drops. I kind of need to change this now because I'm more leaning towards suggesting the triple blend flakes or just like the kelp flakes that Sea Seasonings, what are they called? Here, I'll look them up right now for you guys. Because their brand is not Sea Seasonings, it's something else. But if you search Sea Seasonings triple blend flakes, they come up. But yeah, this is what I often use now because it also includes dulse, which is pretty high in iodine as well, and also provides a lot of different minerals. And it has kelp in there and laver. So I like to use this right now, but they also have brands of just kelp, or just kelp, just dulse, and a few other things, but I like to add these to the meal now usually. Powdered kelp, the now kelp is the powdered kind, which is like super concentrated. But I'm just I'm trying to try out different brands. I like to rotate with different brands. And I also just feel like these are more naturally, properly sourced than the now kelp. But I don't, say don't ever use the now kelp. I just like to use these now. Oily fish, that was my question. How much sardines in water? 3.5 cans would be good for a 95-pound German Shepherd per week, currently feeding. So I can, after I do this one, I could use your dog as an example, and I'll show you how much sardines we would need to be using if we're using that as an ingredient to balance. So we'll see how much there. Could I just use dulse, and is that the same ratio amount? I think I added dulse in here as well. Yes. So we'll just use dulse as an example. Maybe you just want to buy the dulse and take a break from kelp. So let's use that. And this goes by teaspoon. If you guys are ever confused on like what unit to use for what ingredient, I have it kind of right there in a parentheses. So you would need to use teaspoon in this case. So I start out small. So I'm going to say like a 1/4 teaspoon and see if that meets. It's coming up red right now, but you can ignore that. That won't be happening in the update. So it's not there yet. So let's try a 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, so that's meeting it almost perfectly. So yeah, dulse is actually a lot higher. At least when I'm looking at Sea Seasonings, it's a lot higher in iodine than the kelp. So that's a good alternative to kelp if you'd like to rotate. For canned sardines and tuna juice, is it okay to add water to food or is it too much salt? Do you mean like mix water with the juice? Or like soak the fish to like get some of the salt off? Because you can do either of those. I mean, soaking the fish, I feel like that might be kind of difficult because it's really flaky and it might come apart. But you can add water to it as well, just to kind of cut all the sodium from the juice would still be there. It's just not as concentrated, I guess. Just the juice from the can. Kruger is on kibble right now, but he is being picky with that too. I mean, you can use the juice. It's probably not going to be crazy high in sodium or anything. I wouldn't use it like every single day, but you can use that just to kind of add a little bit to the meal, or sometimes I use it for like a topper to kind of encourage Tangy to eat sometimes because he'll be picky with some things. So I'll use the fish juice for that. But yeah, okay. So now that we've done the iodine, let's go to the vitamin D and vitamin E, and then we'll go on to the B vitamins. So vitamin D, like I said, with the omega-3s, it's always good to add a little bit more, even if it's being met in the diet. So a good way to add a little bit more omega-3s and meet vitamin D is with salmon, mackerel, and sardines, or something like krill oil or fish eggs. But of course, the fish eggs would need to be like not salted. All these stupid seafood things are salted. So we're going to use iodine, or sorry, I was reading iodine. We're going to use mackerel, or actually, no, we'll use the sardines for the bigger dog and we'll use mackerel right now. So I always find Atlantic mackerel. So that's just what I'm going to be using here. And again, it really doesn't take much with these whole foods to balance to meet the nutrient needs. Again, it's also not bad to go a little over. So I'm going to do 0.5 here. And we're meeting vitamin D. If you want to add a little bit more, like if Matzo was a puppy, I'd probably add a little bit more just because the DHA is great for brain development and the joints and just growing in general. So I would add maybe a little bit more, but this is good for his adult self. Vitamin E. I usually always add a vitamin E, like a natural vitamin E oil, just because it's easier. It's kind of hard to find vitamin E sources in anything animal based. Grass-fed and finished animals, like their meat and their organs, and pasture raised eggs, they're going to be a lot higher in vitamin E. But if I wasn't feeding any pasture raised or grass fed and finished things, I would be adding a supplement at that point. I don't really like to add seeds that much, so I'm going to go with the vitamin E. Yes, well, cod liver oil is another good omega-3 and vitamin D source, and it also has some vitamin A in it as well. So right now I'm using the Kala Health vitamin E like gel caps. But I wish they weren't as concentrated. So for smaller dogs and cats and stuff, I wouldn't recommend those. I would probably go with just like the Solgar drops. But right now I'm kind of balancing over time with these little tablets or gel caps because they they provide quite a bit of vitamin E. So just one gel cap, I'm like very high over the recommended intake, which the recommended intake is not like you have to just meet it and then never go above it. It's very okay to go above the recommended intake, especially if you need to add it for therapeutic reasons, or if you're feeding a lot of oily fish, the vitamin E needs to increase. So obviously it's not too high. Vitamin E actually doesn't even have like a safer upper limit because they have not seen an overdose effect from vitamin E, from like excess amounts of vitamin E. But even still, I wouldn't just give him one of these gel caps every day. I usually give it like once a week. So that's what I'll be adding there for this. And finally, the thiamine and the cobalamin. Cobalamin. I actually haven't ever said that out loud, so I may have butchered that word. But vitamin B12, we'll just say. So thiamine is like 0.01 milligrams low. That doesn't scare me or anything. But something that can meet it super easily is either adding a something like kidney to the diet. Obviously you can't get chicken kidneys. They're insanely small and you're just not going to get them out. But if your pet is not, sensitive to beef, I would add something like beef kidney. But I would be wary because there's already 10% liver in here, and only 10% bone. So if you add too much organ meats, the stool might start to get really loose. So if I just added 0.2, we're probably not going to meet B12. Yeah. So something else that you could do instead of adding kidney is nutritional yeast. I have a few different brands in here. Bragg's is another good brand. There's really no bad brand, I would say. I would just say just source, look for one that's naturally, I don't know, organic or natural or just not super cheap. I don't know. It may still be fine, but I just have now and Cal in here. And I usually use Now. So just the tiniest teaspoon will meet these B vitamins like super easily. So this is like a 4th teaspoon. Even if I did like an 8th teaspoon, well, I guess it's not meeting that one, so we'll do 4th. Okay, maybe a half. That should be meeting it. No, I didn't honestly realize they were this low in B12, but they are. I mean, I wouldn't be worried about just like 1 microgram too low or anything, but I'd probably stop it around a teaspoon. And that basically provides most of the nutrients for chicken grinds. Vitamin K, you don't really have to worry about this because it's being synthesized in the colon. But I still like to put it here just so you can see, even though freaking food data doesn't really show you much information for vitamin K or chloride. But yeah, so the fat is kind of low. So that's another thing you could try and add to bring the fat up, especially for cats and puppies and kittens. You want to bring that fat up a little bit. So that's always something to look at. And if you're feeding something like grass-fed and finished beef fat, I would say that the vitamin E and vitamin D could potentially be being met that way. But it's just something you kind of have to just think about and see what you can source. And yeah, but there's not many ingredients here to balance the chicken. What is a good fat percentage for puppies? Usually around 8 to 10%. It can even go a little bit higher, but 10% is usually a good medium for raw diets and puppies. Yeah. So now for the next one, we'll use a larger breed dog. Let me see what you said. 95-pound German Shepherd. So 95 pounds. And I don't know if you said the age. I guess we could do a 95. Well, obviously it's not a puppy, or not a very young puppy. So we'll just do 3 years old. We'll keep them neutered. And you wanted to see how much sardines. Are the canned oysters you mentioned farmed? I mean, some are. It depends, I guess, on which canned oysters that you buy and where they source. But these, like the Pacific oysters and Eastern wild oysters, I mean, the Eastern oysters, they say it's wild. So the Pacific oysters, I'm assuming it's wild, or at least like not farmed. I mean, obviously that means it's wild, but it doesn't actually say. So I'm not sure about that. But yeah, let's try the next protein now. So we will try turkey, just go down the line, because they're all pretty somewhat different from each other, even though the nutrients needed are still pretty similar. So obviously it's suggesting around 38 ounces. So we'll do that 38 ounces and see what that looks like. Still a little bit low in calories. Like, as I said, Viva says their food shows a little bit lower in calories than it is. So we could just go up to 40. And that might help the nutrient intake as well. So again, no issue there with meeting the amino acids. EPA and DHA is a little bit low. And manganese is a bit low. It looks like iron, copper, and zinc are being met, so that's good. And then we've got iodine, vitamin E, and vitamin D being low, and a little bit low in thiamine. So let's start out with the sardines, because sardines are actually a decent source of some B vitamins as well. So maybe we can kill 3 birds with 1 stone with these sardines. So I have boneless, skinless, packed sardines, which are going to be the tinned or canned sardines. I also have raw sardines. So we're talking about canned right now, so we'll do that. And since this is a large breed dog, it's going to take a little bit of, probably a few cans. I don't know. We'll see. So let's start with 1 ounce. This is probably not going to be enough, but we'll just start there. So that will meet the EPA and DHA. Vitamin D is getting there, and thiamine is still a little bit low. So let's do 1.5. Almost. So we're meeting vitamin D now. Thiamine isn't really being that affected by them, so I'm going to ignore that for now. We're going to keep the fish at 1.5 ounces. So I don't remember how much how much are in the canned or tinned sardines, but about 1.5 ounces is what's meeting both nutrients for an adult 95-pound German Shepherd. So yeah, so the next one we're looking at is, okay, 3.5 ounces. I mean, I would say that's a little high. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, 3.5 ounces in a can, or that's how much you're feeding. I don't, it might be 3.5 ounces in a can. But yeah, yes, in a can. So if you did just one can, it brings up the calories. The EPA and DHA, it's like pretty high, 700%. And then vitamin D, it's like 120 IU over. It's not in a bad range, but you'd need to increase your vitamin E in your diet, in your pet's diet, if you are feeding 3.5 ounces a day. And sometimes that's necessary to feed a little bit more. Again, like I said, if it's a growing puppy, or if it's a pet with joint issues or inflammation issues going on, EPA and DHA help with that. But you do need to increase the vitamin E because of the oxidation that happens with the fats, and vitamin E helps prevent that. Gosh, the vitamin A is crazy high. And that's what happens when you feed 10% liver. Okay. But it's also obviously not meeting the, it's not exceeding safer upper limits, so it's okay. But it's pretty high. Okay, so manganese. How was I meeting manganese last time? I didn't, well, something was meeting it in the chicken. So manganese is still low. So two things that are pretty high in manganese, as the cheat sheet will show, is blue mussels. Green-lipped mussels are a lot lower in manganese than blue mussels, but they still provide some. Green tripe is a great source. And then pumpkin seeds are also a decent source, but again, I'm not crazy about the seeds. So let's do let's just do the mussels. I always use just the blue mussels cooked here. And I start around, well, for a large breed, let's start with 0.5. And we're almost there. 0.8. Yes. Okay. So we're meeting them pretty easily with less than an ounce of mussels. And then iodine, fish and mussels are going to be providing a little bit of iodine. Let me see if I have the data in there for that, because I had to search a bunch of different studies. Okay, so there's some in there. So that's good, but not enough. So we'll use the triple blend flakes for this one. And we'll do 1 teaspoon. Iodine, where are you? Okay, so not yet. We'll do 2 teaspoons. Close. I wouldn't be, bothered by the fact that it's only 17 micrograms low. But if you wanted to feed like 2 1/4, then it's meeting it pretty easily. And then vitamin E is the last one. It looks like the thiamine was met with the seafood that we added. So all we have left is vitamin E. And we'll do the Cala Health again, because this would be a good option for a large breed. And we're meeting it. Yay. So that was balancing turkey grinds just with 4 different ingredients. So yeah, it's really not that difficult. So let's go to the kitty one now. Let's swap between the two. Actually, let's do a puppy first, and then we'll do kitten and cat. So we'll do a 25-pound, 5-month-old. And unaltered. Yeah, we'll do that. this doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to be like OCD about it. Okay, so we will do beef. So beef is pretty high in some things, but it's a little low. It's like uniquely low in a few other things. So let's see what it's suggesting, about 28 ounces. We'll do 30 because it's just saying it's pretty low. I'm going to stop there because I know it's a little bit higher than what it says. I'm going to ignore the lysine being high. I explain a lot, like when people ask about it. For those who don't know, lysine will sometimes be too high for puppies, but I am not worried about it if I'm feeding whole foods. In the studies that they did to see that there is a lysine safer upper limit, they were using like a bunch of odd foods and like isolated synthetic nutrients to see. So it does not scare me when I'm using whole foods, basically, especially if I'm not like over the amount of calories. I'm not overfeeding a certain part. Like I'm not only feeding heart as the only meal, or as the only ingredient in the meal. So yeah, that can be ignored for this instance. So we're low in EPA and DHA. Calcium is above. What? That's something I've never seen before. That's kind of crazy to me. I'm gonna have to look into that because I've not seen that. Where did you go? I'll have to figure that one out. Okay, hold on. Let me think about how much Matsu weighed at 5 months. He was like, I'm gonna say 15 pounds. Yeah, well, obviously I can't be feeding 30 ounces, 15 ounces. Well, it doesn't say the calcium is low for that instance. I wonder, I'll have to look into that. I won't like sit here and just like question it. I'll keep it at this weight though. Now it says it's high in calories too. I don't know what's going on with the Viva Raw beef. We'll just keep it at like 10 ounces, I guess. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that, I guess. Maybe we'll do like 12. I'll just keep it at 12. Okay, I'll stop messing with it. Okay, so it's going to be low in EPA and DHA. Low in LA, like I said before, red meats are going to be low in this fatty acid. And then iron and copper are being met because beef liver and other ruminant animal livers are pretty high in copper. And red meats are a bit higher in iron. So those are going to be met. Zinc is also going to be met pretty easily. But it's close. So it doesn't really bother me that it's only like 0.3 milligrams low. Manganese is going to be low, iodine, vitamin D, vitamin E, and B vitamins are usually going to be met in red meats. My puppy is a 5 month old, 5 months old right now, giant breed at 60 pounds. Okay. I will see what that looks like after this, but yeah, that's just weird. Okay, but LA. So things that are high in LA are going to be like poultry skin and fat and poultry meat in general. And seeds, like hemp seeds are going to be decently high in LA. Sunflower seeds, very high in LA. Maybe I'll use no, I don't want to do that. I forgot to look at the fat for turkey, but it's still a little low in fat. Beef is at 7% right now. Maybe I would add a little bit more. I'll just use some sunflower seeds, I guess, just for this instance, just to use different foods. So it's gonna bring it. I would have to bring the food down because this is gonna bring the calories up, which I don't like. So I'll just feed like 0.3. Um, okay. So that kind of contributes to the vitamin E a little bit, which is good. And that meets the LA really well. ALA is now low because I brought the beef down. Let's just do it at 12 ounces. Okay, so ALA will be high in a lot of red meats. LA is higher in poultry and seeds and stuff. So yeah. EPA and DHA is still a little low, so let's use a different thing. We can use fish roe. If you can find fish roe that's not seasoned or cured, this is a good source for omega-3s and vitamin D. So we'll start with like 0.5 ounces. And actually, I could probably go a little lower since we're pretty high in calories right now. Maybe 0.3. So basically meeting it at 0.3 ounces, we'll just do 4. And then manganese, iodine, and vitamin E is now met. So that's good. So manganese, we will do, I don't want to bring the calories up too much more. So I'll do muscles again and shouldn't take much. Yep, meeting. And iodine has been brought up a little bit with the seafood, but still not fully. So I'll do the now kelp since a lot of you guys have the now kelp powder. And it's kind of annoying to put in. It's kind of confusing. So always use milligrams because we're weighing the actual kelp, not the iodine content in it. The iodine content is per microgram, but the kelp is per milligram. So we're measuring the kelp. So usually 1 scoop is 90 milligrams. So for a 15-pound puppy, we're probably going to only have to feed like a half scoop, which is a crazy tiny scoop. Maybe, I guess not. Let's do 1 scoop then. Still low, which is shocking, but since it's a puppy, I guess shouldn't be that shocking. Or is it just not changing? I don't think it's changing for some reason. Is something messed up with my formulator? Sorry, I'm doing something, I'm being really stupid. This should be this should be half of 90, which is like here. That's what I should have done. So 22.5, that would be like a 4th scoop. And that's basically meeting it. So sorry to be confusing, but 22.5 is a 4th of that tiny scoop. So that's 22.5 milligrams of kelp. And that's basically meeting the intake for that puppy. So we're basically meeting everything here now. We're a little high in calories because of the sunflower seeds. And we're a little bit higher in fat, so that's good. And thankfully, there's beef kidney in this, so it's not just 10% liver. Is this using that tiny scoop they provide in the now kelp powder? Yes, that super tiny scoop. So that's like a 4th of that tiny scoop. So it's very little. This kelp powder is very concentrated. So yeah. All right, let's go over to the kitties really quick because we're almost at the hour. Sorry, I like just talk too much. We'll do an adult cat right now. So maybe around 10 pounds, 3 years old, spayed or neutered. Okay. So we will do the duck. And you will see how high that vitamin A is with the duck. So we'll do 5 ounces of food. And we're close to meeting calories, so that's good. Okay, so EPA and DHA is a bit low. Iron, copper, and zinc are being met, so that's good. Manganese is low, iodine is low, vitamin D is slightly there. And then vitamin E is low, and thiamine, and well, we don't really pay attention to the biotin and choline because these are 2 other nutrients that food data for some reason does not analyze. So they are being met. They're just, it's not showing that they are, sadly. So thiamine is the only thing that's really low, the only B vitamin that's low here. So, and let's look at the vitamin A. That's not terrible. Let's see how much higher. Like 1,000%. So yeah, I guess that's kind of terrible, but not terrible enough to meet the safer upper limit. So that's good. If time before signing off, can you go over saving a recipe and then reopening? Yes, I'm sorry. I meant to do that. I meant to do a video for that for you, but I can do it here as well. So let's quickly meet these nutrients then. EPA and DHA and vitamin D. Since the vitamin D isn't crazy low, we can use a different fish. We can use something like smelt. I know a lot of people like to use smelt, and it's a very kiddie friendly fish because it's really small. So we'll do 0.4 ounces. So that meets EPA and DHA. Vitamin D is basically met now. It says within minimal requirements, but it's at like 0.46. So it's meeting it. So you can ignore that. Manganese is only slightly low. Maybe if you wanted to add a little bit of variety, we can add a little bit of tripe. So 0.4, another small amount. Maybe we'll be meeting that manganese. Yes, we will. So that's good. And then iodine, vitamin E, and thiamine. So I'm trying to think of other iodine sources. I mean, there's really not that much. Like there's other foods, but it's like not going to be as high as kelp. So we'll do dulse again. Another thing, oh, I didn't put the dulse in here, so I'll just do my triple blend flakes again. And we'll do a half teaspoon. With the iodine, some people know this, but I'll just explain it again. For cats, for adult cats, the iodine suggested, or the iodine amount suggested per the NRC is a little too high. And that was found out through some more recent studies. So I always don't meet the iodine requirement in this. I give about a third of what it suggests, because I think that's what the study said. It was about a third of what it suggested is actually the amount that cats need. So I don't like make it perfect, but I don't meet that nutrient need. So at 45 micrograms, I'm good. I could honestly maybe even feed a little less, but this is good. This is fine. So I'm going to keep it at that. And then for the vitamin E, I'll do the Solgar drops. This is a lot easier to dose out for smaller pets. So just like 1 or 2 drops. I'll just do 1 because it's a cat. And you really don't need that much to meet the vitamin E intake. If I was feeding more fish, I'd maybe go up to 2. But it's good at 1 drop. And then the thiamine, again, the nutritional yeast is just a really good option. It's so easily met. Or B vitamins are so easily met by such a small amount. So like this is like an 1/8 teaspoon, 0.125. And it's easily meeting it now. So we're good. And everything else looks good too. Wait, why am I? Okay, never mind. Yeah, we're good here. And the fat is at 10%, which is good for cats. Oh, this kind of messed up because I put the tripe in there. So the percentages are a little altered now, but that's okay. Also, something to keep in mind with PMR grinds for cats, it's going to be like 10% bone, obviously, which cats do a little bit better with like 6 to 8% bone. I've seen Tangy have some constipation issues with PMR grinds. So another thing you could maybe add is organ meat, just a little bit, like kidney. Like, let's see if I could meet thiamine with kidney. So if I added a little bit more beef kidney to kind of fix those percentages, I'm not going to be meeting it exactly, but let me try pork kidney. Yeah. It's not going to be, you're probably not going to meet thiamine with it, but, oops. It's not that low. So this wouldn't bother me. It's close. So yeah. And that helps get the bone percentage down to like 8%. Um, liver, of course, is still going to be high. I wish it was lower, but it's okay. Yeah. You mentioned updated formula sheets. Do those have to be purchased with each update, or is there a local location to access the latest one when you post? The dog formula I have shared with me on Google Drive still is 1.04. Oh, well, yeah, they're free updates, and I'll email them to you with whichever email that you purchased them with. So it would go to that email. So I will announce like everywhere when the update happens, and you should be seeing it in your email. And if you don't, I will just email it to you personally. And if you want this is 2.0. So if you want that now, just email me, Mariah@pawsofprey.com, and I can send you this one, but the new one's coming out soon. So I don't know if you just want to wait. Do we need to worry about the nutrient ratios when doing PMR grinds as well? Or if we are providing variety, are we good to go? If you're providing a decent variety, I would say you're good. Like, let's look at this right now. Calcium to phosphorus is 1.2 to 1. That's a little high to me. Even with like the kidney added, it's at 1.2. I mean, it doesn't scare me or anything, but that's something to think about, especially for large breeds. 1.2 to 1 is okay. But if it goes any higher, that would kind of worry me for large breed puppies. Zinc to copper for kitties. I also have the nutrient ratios that you can reference here on the cheat sheets. So zinc to copper should be around 15 to 1. It's at, I'm at the dog one, 5 to 1. So, I mean, you don't have to get crazy perfect. Like, I would probably keep it as is. Like, hold on. Like, you'd have to feed a lot of oysters to get that to 15 to 1. And the reason, I just think it's probably not worth it to add a lot more things, because you're going to be like increasing the nutrients in the meal, which may not be bad, but it's like just to meet the ratios, it may not be worth it. Especially if you're feeding the variety. The variety will help balance it over time. So I wouldn't worry too much unless you're just feeding like 1 or 2 proteins. But yeah, can we add a column in the ratio/analysis tables to show recommended ratio versus current ratio so we can see where they are? I was thinking about that. I may do that in a future one. But again, they're there on the cheat sheet. I think the cheat sheet is something that you may have to reference quite a bit. With the formulator, it kind of comes with it because you get the free cheat sheet and then you can get the formulator. But the cheat sheet's always there. It's free, so you can always just get it. But it'll show the nutrients that are low in PMR. It'll show you the how to calculate calories by hand. Give some notes. Here are the nutrient ratios. The one for dogs will be here as well, right here in the center. I know it's a lot of information. Like, it's kind of overwhelming, but I kind of, I tried to like separate things out. So they're there. I know it'd be easier if it was just like right here though. So I'll think about how to make that look good for like the next update. No, I mean the 2 tables at the bottom of the sheet at the very end. Oh, like down here? Like to have like okay. That's a good idea too. I'll think about that too. That's a good idea. Yeah. I'll have to see how that would look. But yeah, we can try that. Okay. Let's do a kitten now. I know we're kind of getting over time. So let's do a little kitten, 4 pounds. I honestly forgot like the weight for like certain ages for kittens. Does that sound about right? 4 pounds at 5 months. Okay. No. Okay, we're at rabbit now. Rabbit's the problem child. So we'll do 5 ounces. Okay. I knew someone had a kitten in here. We'll do 5 ounces right now. Okay, so it's even showing that no, taurine's being met. It's just almost perfect, but you can ignore the yellow. So it's about there. But since taurine, we have to remember, I can't keep forgetting this. So we have to remember to add taurine to kitties' meals. So let me just, the 2 things that I have in here right now are Pure, the brand Pure, and the brand Now. I like both of those brands. You can use other brands too. But I'm going to use the Now 500 milligram tablets, and you really don't need to add much. So honestly, like an 1/8 capsule will be meeting that taurine and like exceeding it pretty decently. So yeah, just an 1/8 capsule would be meeting taurine needs for all of these grinds. But again, you can use a little bit more. It's not going to overdose them or anything. Okay, so EPA and DHA, of course, are low. Iron, copper, zinc, manganese, iodine, vitamin D, vitamin E, thiamine, B12, and folic acid. There's just a lot, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have to be adding like a crazy amount of things. So let's figure this out. I try and see like what else is low and see if I can kind of kill a few birds with one stone. And of course this, okay, so they add rabbit kidney in here. Is taurine needs to be added every day? I would say no. Well, if you're feeding grinds exclusively, then I'd probably say yes. But if you're swapping between DIY and this, then I would say no. Again, if you do it every day, it's not going to be harmful. Okay, so in these rabbit grinds, there's rabbit kidney and rabbit liver. So I would probably say if you can find spleen, add that. Because not only will that reduce the bone percentage by adding a little bit more organ meat for cats, which is good, it'll add in some iron pretty easily. So you can just do like 0.2 ounces and see what that does. Okay, so we are meeting iron now, and we are helping the ratios get a little altered for cat ratios. Copper and zinc are almost there. We'll do oysters again. Oops. We'll do the Pacific oysters this time. We'll do 0.2 ounces for starting out. And okay, copper and zinc are now being met. Manganese, let's do tripe. We just want to add some more variety to this. So we'll do 0.4 ounces and see what we're, yep, meeting manganese now. That helped add a little bit more iron as well. We're low on vitamin D still, so let me think. I guess we'll do salmon. Canned pink salmon, because that's commonly found. A little bit more sodium is okay for growing pets, so we'll just do a little bit of salmon, so 0.3 ounces. And we're now meeting vitamin D, and we're adding a bit more omega-3s, which is good for growing kittens. And now we've just got the iodine, vitamin E, and B vitamins. So I would let's do the kelp powder again. Kelp powder, let's just do 1/4 scoop. Okay, where'd you go? I would probably feed maybe like even less than that. Like let me see. So an eighth scoop, and it's saying it's a little low, but again, I'm kind of being modest here with the iodine intake for cats. So that's about as much as I'd be adding there. Vitamin E, I would do the Solgar drops again. And for the B vitamins, again, nutritional yeast is just a good option. And we'll do a fourth teaspoon, see if that meets everything. It does. So yeah, we are basically good for everything now. And the fat is a little bit higher now that we have seafood. Rabbit's pretty lean, so there's not going to be too much fat. But yeah, if you have some, beef fat or suet, I was going to say if you were using kidney in here instead of spleen, you could use some of the suet that was in the kidney, but we do need the spleen in here for the iodine. So if you did have suet, you could just feed like, let's see what 0.1 ounce does, because that brings up the calories a lot and it helps increase the fat. So a little goes a long way with that. And again, if it's grass-fed and finished beef, then you probably are going to get a little of, the vitamin D and vitamin E from that as well. Yeah, so that's, yeah, those are the main ones that I have in here. And we're over time now. I said I was going to do stuff for like kangaroo and things like that. But I would have to kind of use like beef bones to guess the bones. I have ground kangaroo in here, so I could use that for the muscle meat, but then things like liver and kidney, I really would have to be guessing. So I really wish I had data for that, but I don't. I would say things like kangaroo, bison, emu, any wild caught animals would be more on the like beef side of things, as far as like nutrients that are going to be low. So I would kind of reference what I did for beef there, and kind of see what nutrients are low there and kind of apply that to things like the wild caught game, or I know kangaroo is more red meat. So yeah, I would probably keep it closer to the beef than something like poultry. So that's mainly it. I hope that helped. If you guys have any questions or I didn't cover anything specifically that you wanted, I will definitely try and do that. Answer any questions in the Pause of Pray Club, and you can just ask there. But yeah, that's about it. It's not that much things that you have to add in to balance. You're welcome, Sydney. Yeah, you're welcome. I will upload this in a few hours once everything is uploaded and processing on YouTube, and post it there, and so you guys have it. And I'll put the slides there as well.